Good afternoon. Welcome to the Cambridge English webinar on successfully developing and conducting writing activities. I'm Vijaya and I'll be taking you through today's webinar. When identifying, the first thing you need to do is identify a writing activity. So which of the following is not a writing activity? Students work in pairs to do a worksheet on transition words to understand their usage in a written piece. Students write the first draft of a complaint letter. Students write answers to comprehension questions. Students practice placing the comma to improve written expression, and students write an essay on my pet. Indicate your choice on the poll to the right-hand side of your screen. Which of the following is not a writing activity? Please mark your choice. Okay, all our participants have selected students write answers to a comprehension question as an activity which is not a writing activity. Let's see if that answer is correct. That is the correct answer. Students writing answers to comprehension questions is not a writing activity, but rather a reading activity, a reading comprehension activity. So what is a writing activity? Any activity which either teaches or provides practice to students in a sub-skill which will develop their written proficiency so that they are able to express themselves more effectively, whether it is in terms of the language used, punctuation, or organization of ideas, can be called a writing activity. Basically, it is a productive skill in which they need to produce language. So the next thing we need to look at is the focus of an activity. What is the focus of a writing activity? It can be an accuracy focus, where we are concerned with the how of the skill, and the focus is on the correct use of mechanics to convey a message. It is, for example, how you write a letter or how you write a note. The other focus is a fluency focus, where the focus is on the overall meaning conveyed through a piece of writing. Here, we are concerned with the what of a skill. That is, for example, if you write a letter, you're not worried about the punctuation or the grammar or the spelling, but you're more worried about whether the message is accurately conveyed. Once you figured out the focus of your activity, the next thing you need to do is develop a SMART aim. What is a SMART aim? S for specific, M for measurable, A for achievable, R for relevant, and T for time-bound. Let's look at each of these in detail. When we say an aim should be specific, what we mean is you need to define the primary and secondary focus of the activity. Is it an accuracy or a fluency activity? Is it a teaching activity or is it a practice activity? A teaching activity is an activity by which you convey certain input or certain points. A practice activity is an activity that allows you to put into practice what you've already learned. Measurable are the parameters that you look at if you need to determine whether an activity has been a success. How do we know if the aim that has been set has been achieved? So you need certain parameters to measure that. Achievable means that the aim that you set, it should consider the current ability of the students, the time that's available, the resources that are available, and the aim should be achievable within these parameters. Relevant is the aim set relevant to the development of the skill being concerned. And finally, time bound. How much time have we set within which we expect to achieve this aim? So which of the below are SMART aims? We have three different aims. Aim 1, by the end of the session, my students will be better able to use the comma to separate clauses in a complex sentence. The second aim is by the end of the session, the students will have noticed and understood the content and organization of the same in a letter of complaint. And aim 3, by the end of the session, the students will have organized the content of an argumentative essay in effective paragraphs. Press the button to indicate which of these three aims are SMART aims. So which of the below are SMART aims? Is it aims 1? Is it aims 1 and 2? Or is it aims 2 and 3? Or is it aims 1 and 3? Or is it all three? Which of the below are SMART aims? Indicate your preferences. Everyone? Let's see what you voted. So 50% of our participants have voted aims 1 and 3 as being SMART aims, whereas the other 50 have said all three aims are SMART aims. Let's look at the answers. Aim 1 is definitely a SMART aim, as is aim 2, and so is aim 3. So the answer is aims 1, 2, and 3 are all SMART aims. Writing an aim. When you're writing a SMART aim, the first thing you need to do is identify the topic or the focus area. The second thing that you need to do is decide what you want your students to do. Do you want them to learn something or practice something? The third is you need your students to decide upon the context that you will use. The fourth is you need to gauge how much time you will need to complete the activity. The fifth step is to decide upon the activity that you will use. And finally, the sixth step is when you write the aim. Once you've finished with the aim, you need to develop a writing activity. The aim of the activity. Now, for example, let's take this aim as an example. By the end of this activity, students will have noticed and understood the content and organization of the same in a letter of complaint. Okay, this is the aim of your activity. Now you can see that it is a SMART aim because it's specific, it's measurable, it's realistic, and it's time bound. So what is the primary focus of the activity? In this case, you need to switch to your webinar tab in order to be able to vote. What is the primary focus of this activity? Accuracy or fluency? What is the primary focus of this activity? By the end of this activity, students will have noticed and understood the content and the organization of the same in a letter of complaint. What is the primary focus of this? Is it fluency or accuracy? Let's see what our participants have said. All our participants feel the activity is a fluency activity. Let's see if they're correct. No, the answer is accuracy. Because you're worried not only about the message, but the way that the letter is organized and the content of it. So if this was to be the activity, the aim that you're looking at, what should your students know in this case? First, they should know what a complaint letter is. Secondly, they should know the difference between formal and informal language. Then, they should have the basic knowledge about paraphrasing. They should recognize letters and their sound. So what should students know? They should know what a complaint letter is. That is, they need to understand the tone of a complaint letter is negative, and it means that the writer is not happy with something, and that such a letter normally invokes action from the party addressed. They should also recognize letters and their sounds. Students should be able to recognize letters and their sounds so that they can read fluently. This is important so that they don't spend time struggling with reading the letter rather than focusing on the task at hand. They should have basic knowledge about paragraphing. Students at this stage should know what a paragraph is. What they will learn through this activity is what those central ideas in a complaint letter are and the order of the paragraphs. Students should know the difference between formal and informal language. They will be able to take a note of the content appropriately only when they are aware of this. Analyzing the current situation. What do the students know? What interaction patterns can I use? What resources do I need? And what problems do I anticipate? So the first thing, what do students know? Students should know what a complaint letter is. That is, they should understand the tone and the nature of a letter like this. They should also understand the usage and difference between formal and informal language. They should be aware of paragraphing and they should be able to read fluently. What interaction patterns can they use? Since it's a learning activity, they should want the students to work in pairs or in small groups. They will check the answers for the activity as a whole class. What resources do I need? You need to think about what resources do you need. For example, in this case, you need a clear sample of a letter as a complaint, which will serve as the product to be observed for learning. That is, it will serve as a model. You need the key to the activity. Then you need to think about the problems that you anticipate. For example, students might get stuck in decoding the language of their letter and notice things other than that which is required by the task. Students may not be able to relate to the content of the letter and may not engage with the text as expected. Students may focus on other things. We could blank out the vocabulary and expressions that we want students to notice and ask them to discuss in pairs and fill in the blanks. So this way, you get them to focus on exactly what you want them to focus on. Students may not be able to relate to the content. So, in that case, you may need to build a context around the content of the letter. Apart from these considerations, there are also other questions you need to ponder over. Will the activity keep most of the students in the class engaged? Are your instructions being planned and will they take the students through the activity step by step? Have you taken into account the time that you have in hand for the activity? Will the interaction pattern that you've chosen keep most of the students involved? And have you planned for enough time for the activity? Have you thought about the composition of the group of your students? You need to make sure that you engage with these questions and make sure that you are prepared with answers for all these questions in order to be able to tackle your writing activity successfully. The activity in progress. Think about what a teacher should be doing or not doing during the writing activity. Teacher should go around the class to ensure that all students are on task. The teacher should sit on her chair and wait for students to finish the task. The teacher should go around the classroom with a notebook in his or her hand and a pen or pencil. She or he supports the student as they do the task. So which of these should the teacher not do during the activity? So the teacher sits on the chair and waits for the student to finish the task. This is not something that the teacher should be doing. Okay, making corrections. How do you make corrections? There are essentially three types of corrections you can look at. Teacher correction, where the teacher will correct the error. Peer correction, where a colleague or a student or fellow classmate will make the correction. And finally, self-correction, where the learner himself will have a key with which he will use to make the correction. When do you make corrections? You have immediate correction and delayed correction. Immediate correction, as the name suggests, are corrections that are done immediately as and when the error occurs during an activity. Delayed correction, as the name suggests, are corrections that are made after the completion of the activity. Immediate correction is done as soon as the error is spotted or identified. What kind of activities do you think calls for immediate correction? Look at your poll and answer which activity do you think calls for immediate correction? Fluency-focused activities or accuracy-focused activities? Please indicate your answer. Let's see what our participants have voted. What kind of activities do you think call for immediate correction? And all our participants have voted accuracy-focused activities. Let's see if this answer is correct. Immediate correction is required for, and that's right, it is accuracy-focused activities. Delayed correction. This kind of correction is done at the end of an activity. What kind of activities do you think call for delayed correction? Switch to your live webinar tab and vote for the activity that you think is right. So do you think it is fluency-focused activities that call for delayed correction or accuracy-focused activities? Let's see what participants think. Participants think that fluency-focused activities call for delayed correction. Let's see if that answer is correct. Delayed correction is more suitable for fluency-focused activities. That is right. So when we started the webinar, the aim of the activity that we had is, by the end of this activities, students will have noticed and understood the content and organization of the same in a letter of complaint. If that was the aim that you began with, how do you measure success? 1, you have to noticing content. 2, noticing organization. And 3, within the time frame mentioned. If you're able to achieve the first 2 within the time mentioned, you can say that your activity was a success. That is, were students able to notice what they were supposed to do? And were students able to notice the manner in which ideas were organized in the letter? Were students able to complete most of the activity within the time boundary that had been set? If the answer to all these questions is yes, you can say successfully that you have completed your writing activity. Before we come to the end of the webinar, I'd like to recap what we looked at. Activities have 2 types of focuses: fluency and accuracy. Once you've determined the focus of the activity, you need to develop a SMART aim for your activity. The aim needs to be specific, measurable, accurate, relevant, and time-bound. Once you have the aim, you need to actually develop your activity, where you need to think about what do students need to know, or what do you need to have in order for the activity to be successful. You need to also think about the challenges that you may face and how you can overcome these challenges. Finally, while the activity is going on, what do you as a teacher do? You can't passively watch your class. Rather, you need to provide the support as required. And finally, when the activity is happening, what error correction will you use? Will it be immediate, which is good for accuracy-based activities, or will it be delayed correction, which is better for fluency-based focused activities? Finally, you need to measure your success. Compare whether you've achieved what you set out to achieve by looking at the aim that you had originally set for your activity. And with that, you'll successfully be able to complete your writing activity. Are there any questions? If there are no further questions, we thank you very much for joining our webinar. Thank you.